All right, guys. Today we're going to do one of these trips back in time. The footage you're about to see was filmed in September, early September. Other projects needed to get done, and this kind of got shuffled to the background. We're going to pick back up on it, but I need to catch you up on what's going on. So let's travel back in time after the intro and show you what we're doing. So hang in there.
I'd say it's a nut job.
All right, so if you're a longtime viewer of the channel, you will remember this FE. This is the Tunnel Ram FE. You can go back and find videos on it. We built that FE here on the channel. We ran that FE here, and when it was here in the videos, you can see, first off, I've never seen an FE rev like this thing does. It is insane how quick revving of an engine this is. FEs are not known to be quick revving engines, not like this, but this one is. So it's an anomaly unto itself. But that's not the issue. In the video, you can see it would sit there and idle with 50 pounds of oil pressure. There's actually, I think, 3 videos on this engine where we ran this engine in all the videos, and it would idle at 50 pounds of oil pressure. And when you would give it, it would do exactly like a good FE should do. When you would rev it, when you would rev it, the oil pressure would come up a little bit, and then go back to idle. It would go back to 50 pounds of oil pressure, exactly like it's supposed to do. Here's where the story takes an interesting twist. Now, before I go any further, I want to preference this by saying, I built this engine. I'm going to stand behind this engine. It does not matter what happened to it. This is my reputation when it comes to engine building, FEs especially. I'm known in a lot of circles as an FE an FE guy to go to for building FE engines, and my reputation is what I have to stand on. So no matter what happened to this engine, I'm going to fix it. So I'm not assigning any fault, guilt, blame to anybody, because yet we don't even know what happened to it. At the end of the day, it does not matter what happened. It's on me, and I'm going to fix it. So with that being said, let's talk about this. As I said, this thing had 50 pounds of oil pressure. I loaded it up in the back of the truck. We ran this engine half a dozen times or more. People would stop by the shop wanting to hear this thing run. So, oh yeah, let's fire it up. And we'd fire it up and run it. So this engine ran quite a bit. Loaded up in the back of the truck, and I delivered it to them at the Gator Nationals. We swapped it around at the Gator Nationals. Actually, it had started raining, so we actually found a bank that was closed and barred their drive-through with an on and over and swapped from one vehicle to the other in a bank drive-through right outside the Gator Nationals. They took it home, set for a few weeks before they had time to get to it. They put it in the car, buttoned everything up, done it. They fired it up and made 0 oil pressure. Okay, first off, that doesn't even compute with me, that it goes from this thing makes 50 pounds of oil pressure to all of a sudden, turn the key, nothing, 0. So I've already got some wheels turning on that. But we have a conversation over the phone. We talk about a few things. He pulls the distributor out of it, puts a drill on it, and with a drill, he sent me a video. I don't remember if it was 25, 30, let's just say 30 pounds of oil pressure with a drill. He puts the distributor back in it, fires it back up, 0 oil pressure. So I have a theory as to what's wrong with it. And then we're going to have to look and see if anything was hurt with it not making oil pressure and running, which we all know the answer to that probably, but we're going to look at everything. My theory, my hypothesis, and we're going to dive into this engine right now and see if I'm if this dog is hunting the right game right here. I think there's an issue with the oil pump drive shaft. If you're not familiar with the Ford FEs, or the Ford engine in general, I think Chevy engines are a little different. I'm not sure how Mopars are done, but I know different engines do it different ways, or different manufacturers do it different ways. On a Ford FE, the bottom of the distributor has like a hex-shaped hole in the bottom of it. The oil pump has the same, a hex-shaped hole in the top. And there's this drive shaft, this rod that's shaped like a hex. Think of stop sign and a long rod. And you put the drive shaft into the oil pump, it stands upright, and then the distributor slides in through the hole and slides down on top of that. As the cam rotates the gear on the distributor and turns the distributor, as the distributor turns, that shaft goes down and then spins the oil pump. I know some engines do it differently. Now, this one has an aftermarket drive shaft in it. What I think is the issue is that somehow the tip of that shaft has gotten the edges rounded off a little bit so that it's not engaging. Now, since it's a hex-shaped shaft, when you stick a tool down in there and turn it with a drill, that tool slides way down in there. What I'm trying to say is a distributor only catches just a little bit of the tip of that shaft right there. But that tool is a long tool, and it'll go down in there till the tool bottoms out. There's not a top of an intake to stop it from going down, if you understand what I'm saying. So I think my theory is that the end of the drive shaft is marred up and it's not allowing it to spin the pump, which wouldn't allow it to build oil pressure while running. But the tool is deep enough that it goes down into a good part of the shaft that's not marred up and will spin the shaft and then in turn make oil pressure. We should be able to see that, if that is the case, simply by pulling the distributor out. And we'll take a magnet and we'll see if we can fish that drive shaft out. I don't know if we can, because those drive shafts are oversized. The aftermarket ones are oversized, and they may not fit through that hole well. We'll see. That's what we're going to do right now. We're going to pop the distributor out of this thing, and we're going to go straight looking at this shaft and seeing if it's marred up. Now, you guys are smart enough to know sometimes the way things are, this may not be what's going on with it, but when you get your mind kind of in one direction, that's actually loose, that's finger tight. When you get your mind on an idea that it could be something, you kind of just have to investigate that first to find out. And my mind is on the fact that I believe it's in this drive shaft, and we're going to have to look at this drive shaft first. If not, I will go absolutely nuts thinking that's what it is the whole time. I honestly can't think of a scenario in my head where anything else can cause oil pressure to go from good to none like that. Anything else I can think of would go from, good, down a little bit, 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 till it fades away. It would do it over time, not just out. It wouldn't just leave the chat. Which this seems to have done. So, need to be opened up to check everything else, because there's probably other stuff hurt now. Oh, that just came right out of there. Was that not engaged at all? That just came right out of there. Was that not engaged? What is that? What is it doing? Okay, we'll look at that in a second. That was kind of weird. I don't like how that kind of just hits there. I can't tell right there. Let me see if we can fish this out. I may need a smaller magnet. Huh. I think we figured something out right there. I think we figured out something goes on. I need to do some measurements. I think we figured something out right here, but I may be wrong, may not be right. I don't know how well this shows up or how well it'll focus. You can see the right here, the very edge of it. It doesn't look very rounded, but if the light will catch it just right, it looks like only the very tip right there was actually coming in. There's a good one. Only the very tip was actually coming in contact with the distributor. This thing was pretty deep in there. Let me try something real quick. So what I'm looking at here is the oil pump drive shaft is supposed to be 8.53 inches. I've got a stock one here somewhere. I need to dig it out. It's supposed to be 8.53 inches. This one right here is just a fraction under 8.5. Now, is those few little tiny numbers going to be enough to make a difference? I don't know. But if those few little tiny numbers are off a little bit, this intake is a tad bit thicker. You see where I'm going with this, right? So at the end of the day, are we only just barely engaging this? But I don't see it rounded off. We need to clean it up and take a closer look at it. This may not be the answer, but what I would like to do is put a different drive shaft in it and see what it is. But I'm gonna find a stock one first and compare these two. Okay, here's a stock one next to that one. Get the bottoms lined up here. There's not a lot of difference between them. It's very little difference between them. There is a little, but it's very little. See if I can zoom in here on this. There's a little bit of difference between the stock one and that one. I don't think that's enough to matter. I don't really think that's going to be a thing there. It's not enough of a difference to, I don't think, to matter. The end of this, wow, where's the end of the camera? Let me turn this around. See if I can get the focus. Focus, focus, focus. The end of this, wow, it's so hard to show on camera. While the end of this is chewed a little, this is the distributor side. It's hard to get the camera to focus on it. We'll see if maybe I can lay it down and zoom on it. See if that'll work better. I think it's got a lot to do with the lighting too. You can kind of catch it there. While the end of this is chewed a little, I don't think that's the smoking gun we were looking for. I don't think that's it at all. While the end of this does have some marks and is marred up a little, And you can feel it with your hand that it's not like it's sharp down here. Up here it's not sharp. It is, like, for lack of a better term, it is rounded over slightly. I don't think it's enough of it to cause it not to work. Now, the real question is, with this drive shaft being just that much longer, which isn't that much, but and we're not talking about the peaks here. We're talking about just where these two right here come across and line up. With the drive shaft being just that much longer, which isn't much, and then you combine that with an aftermarket distributor and aftermarket intake, could it be possible that everything just kind of walked up just a little bit? I don't know. If that sounds like grasping at straws hoping this was it, but I don't see anything wrong with this. I don't see anything wrong with this at all. So as far as I'm concerned, this is not the issue, and we've got a different issue somewhere. All right, so now you're caught up, you're up to speed, and you know as much as I did to this point. The engine was making 50 pounds of oil pressure, and then all of a sudden, the engine makes no oil pressure. That's generally not how things work. Generally, if something's going wrong in an engine, it makes 50, then it makes 40, then it makes 30, and then it makes 20. The speed between 50 and 20 could vary depending on the issue, but it doesn't go from 50 to 0, not unless there's just no oil in it. There is oil in it, by the way, before somebody asks. So the next course of action, since I was pretty sure it was going to be a drive shaft issue, and that drive shaft does show some wear marks on it, but nothing that would indicate not working. So what I'm thinking now is I'm going to put a drive shaft in it, a different drive shaft in it. I've got a priming tool. I'm going to put a gauge on it and a priming tool on it and spin it and see what kind of oil pressure it makes here now. Now, one of two things is going to happen. Either A, it's still going to make no oil pressure. At that point in time, we just need to tear the motor apart and start looking at bearings and start looking at things, even though I don't think bearing issues would be a problem, not by how it just went from one to the other extreme instantly. We'll start looking at things and see what happened. Maybe a galley plug or something sprung a leak. I don't know. We will start looking at issues if that happens. The other thing that could happen is I could spin it with a drill and a priming tool, and it makes 50 pounds of oil pressure again. Well, on a drill, it probably wouldn't make 50 pounds, but it would make good oil pressure again. If that happens, then we got to stay and focus on what we were. Either something to do with the distributor not engaging the drive shaft deep enough, or something in that area. There's only one or two ways with this thing can go, and that's going to be it. So we're going to drop a drive shaft in it, a priming tool in it, and spin it with a drill and see what happens. That's all we can do at this point. Hey, but before we do that, we need to run town real quick. So let's hop into Galaxy. You know, we've been working on making her a street car. So let's jump into Galaxy and run to town and come back, and then we'll get to work on figuring out what's going on here. By the way, the shop's a bit of a mess. There's stuff everywhere. And this video will be kind of jumping around. It's because I'm currently adding on an addition to the garage to be solely a parts area, so that there won't be anything in here except for a toolbox and whatever vehicle we're working on, whatever project. So all the clutter you see in the background will be gone. Well, except for the stuff hanging on the walls. I mean, that's my decor. But all the clutter stuff will be gone. We're going to have a organized parts area, so it won't be, I know I had one of them somewhere. It's going to be, I know exactly where things are. So over the course of the next videos, you'll see a lot of stuff change in the background. Maybe you'll see a lot of stuff change in the background in the course of this video. And it's all because You know how it is. When you start moving stuff around, you got to drag everything out to the center of the room so you can go through it, so you can organize it and put it somewhere else. So we are building an addition on. It's part of the reason that a couple of weeks ago, or a video or two back, you seen us out here with a tractor doing a lot of grading out here. Things are changing. So just the explanation of why things will be jumping around. Let's get in the car and go for a ride. It's been another couple of days. Again, moving everything around the shop. Everything's drug out in the middle of the shop, and I hate doing this kind of stuff, but it's something that needs to be done. It's going to be better in the end. Anyway, back to this FE engine. When they removed this engine, they pulled the oil filter adapter off, and yeah, scraped the gasket clean too. So I'm gonna have to put this back on so I can put an oil filter on it and fill it so I can check it, so I can double check the oil pressure. Just one more thing that I need to do. I believe I have a gasket here for that. I'll have to look and see. Okay, I just filled the oil pan back up with oil and filled the oil filter up. Spilt about half what I was using and made a mess. So now is the perfect time for me to talk about checking, backup checking, or double checking your oil pressure. Now, most people that fool with old hot rods and stuff, you probably have one of these little round gauges you get from the auto parts store. That's just standard. That's what everybody runs. That's kind of the thing that people get. But just like anything else, the quality is not what it used to be, and they can give you bad readings. Now, I'm not saying that's the case with this engine. It may not be. Everything may be 100% accurate. We just need to go back and do our due diligence and check everything. But I have a friend that's a parts manager at a local parts supply place, and he was telling me they've thrown several gauges away recently because they come in defective. As soon as they come into the store, they're already defective. Let me show you what you need. Get you a kit like this if you're going to fool with a lot of engines and you want to double check your gauge and your oil pressure. These things work very well. They're very accurate, and this is a way that you can know what the engine is really making, and you're not relying on a cheap part store gauge. There's a ton of different companies that make these. You can get these most anywhere, and they work really, really well for doing what we're doing today, which is verifying if it does or does not have oil pressure. Okay, you set up here. Here's the pressure testing gauge. This drill doesn't turn very fast, so I don't expect a lot of oil pressure, but keep in mind, when I ran it on the stand, it idled with 50 pounds. When they put it in the car and ran it, it had 0. So we're looking for somewhere, and then we're either confirming or denying something, one of the two. So let's see what we do here. All right, so with the drill, we were just a shade under 40. Yeah, I guess we had 38 pounds of oil pressure. Let's do it again. Yeah, we got 38 pounds of oil pressure with a drill. Now, here's the real question. First off, it's not 0. So the engine makes oil pressure. 38 pounds, I think, is what it was on that gauge. I really just wanted to see if it made any oil pressure. Because, again, customer states. Let's do one of these customer states. If you go back in my videos, it's, gosh, I guess it was January or February of this year. It was early in this year. You can see where we ran this engine. I built this engine and we ran it on a run stand. And it had 50 pounds of oil pressure sitting there at idle. It was idling around 1,200 RPMs. And it made 50 pounds of oil pressure. You blip the throttle and it would run up to 65, 70 pounds of oil pressure. Somewhere in that neighborhood. I don't remember exactly. I'll have to go back and watch myself. But I do know it made 50 pounds of oil pressure at idle. I delivered the engine to them. They put the engine in the car, fired it up, and if I understand the situation correctly, when they fired it up, it makes 0 oil pressure. But I put the drill on it, and I'm making about 38-ish pounds of oil pressure. I don't know. That drill doesn't spin very fast. I think that drill's less than 600 RPMs. It's one of those torque drills things. So I don't know where it should be as far as what that equates to, RPM of the engine-wise, and all that I don't know. What I do know is it makes just under 40 pounds with a drill. My theory is it would still make 50 pounds idling with everything correct. So the real question becomes this. Why did it make 0 there, but it's making good oil pressure here? You understand what I'm saying? I don't think it's a bearing issue at all. If it was a bearing issue, it would still be making virtually no oil pressure. You follow me? Plus, if it was a bearing issue, it wouldn't go 50 to 0. There's some other issue. I'm thinking that perhaps the distributor wasn't all the way down engaged somehow, like the distributor had been taken out, put back in, and or picked up and set back down, and maybe it wasn't engaged all the way. Possibly. What I do know is we're going to investigate it further. We're going to look at everything. We're going to go ahead and drop the oil pan. I'm going to go ahead and look at all the, not all, I'm not tearing it all the way down just yet. I'm going to drop the oil pan, and I'm going to look at a couple of rod bearings, and I'm going to pick a main bearing and take a look at it and see what they show. And honestly, if the bearings show good, then we may go around and make sure that there's not a galley plug that possibly is leaking a little bit. You know, we're grasping right now. I want to know what's causing the issue of it intermittently making no oil pressure. And I'm going to say intermittently because, again, it's making 50 at idle and then makes nothing. but now we're back to making just under 40 off of a drill. So what's going on here? It's going to take some investigation. All right, let's start measuring stuff now and see if it's a clearance issue causing this. I mean, at the end of the day, the easiest thing to do is just tear it down, clean everything up, inspect all the pieces, put it back together, and I'll get to that part later. Right now, I want to know if there is some kind of stack-up issue here that's causing our problems. We got our big calipers out. This is what I use to measure FE push rods because, yeah, they're kind of long in case you didn't notice. All right, let's measure the stock one first. What does a stock FE oil pump push rod measure? And when I say stock, this came out of a running engine that, to my knowledge, never been taken apart. It was still a virgin block, so it should be close to us. It should be a factory Ford push rod or drive shaft rod. All right, so we've got, let me write this down. We've got 8.538. 8.538. All right, let's see what the aftermarket one measures. Come on. So the aftermarket one actually measures 8.540. Aftermarket one's just a tad longer. Now, one thing we got to consider is there are points on the ends. So let's measure from where the actual hex right here starts on both ends of both of these and see what we get. We get on here, all right here. Okay, 8.397. 8.397. Now let's measure hex to hex on this one and see if that's the difference here, or if that is a difference here. Just looking at everything here. Okay. 8.342. Okay. Now let's take a look at our numbers here. Okay, this is the overall length of the new one, overall length of the stock one. The new one, the replacement, is actually a hair longer overall. But keep in mind, they have these points on the ends of them. This one's round on one end and pointed on the other end. The stock ones are. The aftermarket ones are more pointed on both ends. They're kind of a combination of round and pointed on both ends. But if we measure from where the actual hex part starts, the new one is actually a fraction shorter than the old one, or than the stock one. So now you can feel free to double check my math. I just kind of did it in my head real quick. but the new one is just a fraction longer overall. So you'd think, well, then it can't be the issue if it's a fraction longer. The problem is the new one is a fraction shorter where it counts. In where the actual hex starts, the new one is, you know, a decent amount shorter. Now, is that enough to matter? I don't know. I really don't. All right, I'm going to throw some numbers out there, and then I'm going to show you where these numbers come from and how the tolerances stack up. So I took my calipers, and if you're fortunate enough to have a set of these, it really helps. These have a extension that comes out on the end of them, as most good calipers do. Well, even cheap ones now. And you can measure the depth of something. So we use that to our advantage here. I measured from where the distributor sits. I'll have to show you. There's a like a hole there. The distributor, at the end of the distributor slides down into that hole there. Where that hole is, down to where the oil pump drive shaft bottoms out down in there. I measured that distance, and I came up with the number from that to there, to that distance between there. And then I took the measurement of the drive shaft, the new drive shaft, and subtracted it and gave me an overall number, 8.51. That's that overall number there of reach. There is then a witness mark on the bottom of the distributor. You can see it plain as day where it sits down in there and rides. You can see a witness mark all the way around it. You know exactly how deep it sits. I measured that in reference to, or I took that amount of distance off. I'll explain it better in a minute. I took that amount of distance off. Down in there, you can see that hole right there. All right, that is where this part of the distributor slides in. You can see a plain witness mark right there where that distributor is sitting right in there. There's a perfect ring right there around that where that's riding on that. Now, is this exact science? No, but it may be a little different. It may be a burr in there that's rubbing on that, but we're just spitballing stuff right now. So don't take any of this as dead nuts to the millionth of an inch. But there's a round witness mark all the way around that. So for this, I'm calling that the witness mark of where that rides. And when I measure all of that together. Okay, so what we've done is we've measured the distance between, I'm going to try to explain this so that I don't confuse myself while I'm talking. I do that sometimes. Okay, so we've measured the distance from that pad right there down to where the bottom of where the drive shaft will drop into the oil pump drive down there. Then you can see a witness mark on the distributor where it rides inside that hole. At least we're going to call that the witness mark where it rides in, just so we can have numbers here. So we then take that amount off, knowing that it sits down in a hole that far, so we're going to take that much off of it. So that means the perfect push rod length that would touch both ends, and technically you don't want it to touch both ends. You want a little free play. So the perfect push rod that would touch both ends would be 8.51. That would touch both ends. Now, looking at the push rods that we have, looking at the measurement of this push rod, and where the hex is and where it engages at, subtracting that from the 8.51, I came up with 90 thousandths. We're engaging this drive shaft 90 thousandths of an inch by the math. Now, there's several factors here. One, is that witness mark actually there, or is there just a burr in there or something that's rubbing on it? I don't know. The engagement isn't quite where it should be, but it's still technically engaged. Does that matter, or could it have been that distributor wasn't pushed all the way down and snugged down tight. I don't know. I'm not confident enough to say that this is the smoking gun, because it's not like, I just completely missed it. And there's factors that can play into that math. Maybe that witness mark is not exactly right where the top of that thing is. Maybe it's a little bit down in there and there's a burr, like I said, so it could vary there. Now, I'm not confident enough right now to say either way if this is or isn't the issue. Could the distributor hold down clamp not be? Let's check this real quick. All right, I've got the distributor reinstalled and I've got this thing just cranked down tight on this clamp. Now, it's not easy to turn, but even cranked down tight, that turns. So, if that turns, does that mean the distributor is not pushed all the way down, like it could go down further? All right, by the math, if we do the math, if we put a stock one back in there, we end up with almost, not quite, but almost an 1/8 of an inch of engagement. Big difference from 90, I think it was at 93 thousandths or something like that. We end up with 0.123 or 4. I wrote it down right there. So almost an 1/8 of an inch. That's a massive difference. So, is that the smoking gun? I don't know. We're going to pull the oil pan off in the next video. We'll see in the next video if that's the issue that we do on this. I think we have a good idea of what's going on, but we are going to look at bearings first, because let's face it, if the motor was ran any when it read 0 and it was truly 0, then there's a chance that some of the bearings may have gotten damaged. But having to replace bearings and maybe polishing a crank is a lot better than having to replace crank, replace rods, you know what I'm saying? It's a whole lot better than a destroyed engine, because at the end of the day, even when it made no oil pressure, the engine didn't make any noise. Hold on before somebody hits me up. The engine was started, it didn't make any oil pressure, and it was shut off. It wasn't like they just sat there and ran it for an hour and a half trying to figure out what was going on. So, this one's interesting. That's all I can say right now. We're going to see what's going on. I think I have a good clue with this. I think as long as I didn't screw up any of the math anywhere, which is entirely possible, and I'll sit down tonight and go over all the math. And if I screwed some of it up, I'll tell you in the next video when we look at this. But I think right now, the combination between the drive shaft rod and the distributor not being pushed down in there good, I think that's a good indicator of what's going on here. We will know more when we know more. Hey, listen, guys, thank you so much for watching, sharing, subscribing, liking. I know this video didn't show you a lot of stuff, but it showed you how to troubleshoot a mysterious issue. Let's call it that. I know there's going to be some people that disagree with some things, and that's perfectly fine. Do it in a friendly manner, please. We don't need negative comments. I'm always open to constructive criticism. Let's just don't be mean to each other about it, all right? This is how I go through my process. Now, is it the best way to go through it? I don't know, but it helps me work through it mentally of what could go wrong. Now, once we drop the oil pan, all of this may be out the window, and we may find this motor is destroyed, and it just didn't seem like it. We'll find out when we drop that oil pan in the next video. Till then, y'all hang in there. Please watch some videos. Apparently, I need some money. We're going to take apart an expensive engine and see if we can figure out what's going on. So, yeah, I need some money. God bless you guys. I hope the Lord bless you more today than He did yesterday. To Him be the glory, guys. We will see you on the next one.
I'd say it's a nut job.